I think my goal is to demystify it. If you actually set up a capability around AI, then you're basically just looking at it like use case, and it becomes so much less scary if you have foundations correct. Like you talked about adopting within the departments and doing it in 2 or 3 years. And there's a lot of dabbling and there's not enough. Let's make this a real effective tool for our organization.
Think of it as a pyramid. At the base of it is your data. So there are two teams. One team has better quality data than the other team. The second is what we call the feature engineering, or what the AI scientists do. How do we use the data to create the right features to use in the model? And then the third piece is like all the algorithms. So if you have better data, you will beat anybody else who is better than the other two. And if you have the better feature engineering, you'll beat better algorithm. And many times, at least in the early days, people are focusing on which algorithm, what are the latest algorithms and all. But actually the data makes the biggest difference.
AI isn't hard. People find it scary, so there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of catastrophization. There's a lot of people who are like, oh God, Skynet is coming. And you're sitting there and going, it's not that smart yet. When it gets that smart, yeah, we'll ring the bell, but it's not that smart yet. And so part of this is making sure people find it accessible, because the value that can come from it is so much higher as long as we're ethical and responsible, as long as we pick low risk use cases.
Welcome to govai.fm, your no-nonsense guide to AI in the public sector. Connect with peers and learn from real successes, failures, and lessons from the trenches.
So welcome to our first ever podcast about AI in public sector. And I'm Aman Sidhu. I work for a public sector organization as a leader. And I'd like to introduce Girish Limaye, who has been working with me for almost a year now.
Oh, yeah. She's more, but yeah.
So Girish and I met through a mutual acquaintance, and we were developing our program for artificial intelligence, and Girish's name came up. So Girish, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, how you got interested in AI? What's your story?
Absolutely. Yeah. My story and AI story kind of, in my head at least, go along together. So I did my master's in computer science and I finished that in 2004. So that kind of dates me. But that time my thesis was in multi-agent systems. And remember, 2025 is going to be the year of the agents, those agents, right? So I have had some background in machine learning and AI, but in 2004, AI was in one of its AI winter. So AI was not a cool thing at that time, right? So after graduating, I did a lot of development work in startups, worked in Silicon Valley, worked in big companies, Wells Fargo, Wachovia, did a lot of data things for in Canada in a lot of public sector companies. And was doing a lot of data, advanced analytics, all sorts of building scalable applications. Till 2012, something interesting happened in AI again, right? So in 2012, there was a contest called ImageNet Challenge. So we had a bunch of images. Think of it like a washing machine and a zebra and lots of things, right? And humans had tagged them. And the goal was for an algorithm to look at that image and identify what that is. And at that time, a lot of machine learning ways were very popular, like many traditional machine learning algorithms. And people every year, from 2006-7, they would get 70% accuracy and 70.2 and 70.8 and 71. So the human accuracy for that was something like 95, because there were some images which were hazy. Like if you ask 5 humans, then 3 would say one and 2 would say another. So human accuracy at that time, the benchmark was 95 or something. And then what happened was there was this one of the teams that came from Jeff Hinton and some of his students in Canada. And then they just suddenly got that accuracy very high, 77 or 78. And people were like, what just happened here? Everybody knew all the other algorithms and other ways of thinking. And this was a new way. And this was the first time something that Jeff Hinton had started in 1980s was working in reals. And this was deep learning, right? This was the deep learning revolution. And the next year, everybody used deep learning. They gave up on all their older ways, and everybody used deep learning, and it got 80. And then in 2 or 3 years, the contest stopped because it reached human accuracy and the problem was solved, right? And everybody woke up all this advent of AI, it all started with ImageNet and image recognition, right? Auto-driving cars and all those things. So at that time, I was AI architect working in a consulting company, and I wanted to go back and learn AI again, all the new things that have happened since. So I went to Stanford, learned from the best, Andrew Ng, Chris Manning, Leskovich, the top guys, right? Working as the top data scientists and whatnot. whatnot. So after having done that, one of the CIOs at that time was reading about like, oh, what is this AI? And we want to start an innovation center. And then they said, yeah, one of our architects is into AI and he does AI algorithms. And also I started working there and got into like creating an innovation lab and then using different AI techniques. Many worked, many did not work, right? Like, so you getting something that works, like getting a good demo versus getting value are very different, right? Like there are a lot of good demos. So got to learn a lot about these good demos versus values in 2017. Not many companies, not many people were doing AI, like the AI that we use now, what we are calling AI, wasn't being used in 2017, very, very early. So yeah, so then applying a lot of these AI patterns, whether it comes to conversational agents, whether it comes to just tabular data, like a lot of AI works very well on tabular data. And it's not just about AI and algorithms, but also how to do the change management within the organization. So one of the things my professor Andrew Ng would say that when they had auto driving cars in for the first time in a city in Texas, they would have the driver actually sit in the driver's seat and be there as the just to be sure that everything is working well. And after 6 months, the same guy, the chauffeur, would sit in the passenger seat, but he was still there. So if something goes wrong, he's still there, right? And then after that, it was purely auto driving where you would just hail a taxi and there will be nobody there. But that change management is very important. So yeah, got to experiment a lot with that too.
Would you consider that human on the loop?
Human first in the loop, human on the loop. So validating, making sure that if anything goes wrong, the human is there, and then making it purely automated.
Fully autonomous. Yeah, I got you.
In fact, even the GPT. So GPT started with this T stands for transformer, which is like an AI architecture, and it came up in Google, right? Like in 2015, there was 16. There was a paper from Google guys called "Attention is all you need." It was very popular. And so I was at Stanford at that time, and Ashish Vaswani, who was one of the main authors of the paper, he came and we spoke about that paper, and it was more for machine translation at that time, like English to French, like that kind of stuff. But he was showing that is so generalizable that it can do something like a chat GPT can, right? Like it can understand not just language, but even images and things like that. So I used the GPT-2 equivalent models and then GPT-3. So I kind of got to see a lot of these things ground up from got to see a lot of these under the hood things. A lot of things that we see spoken about AI in conferences and all, there is a lot of jargon and a lot of terminologies that are used, which unfortunately makes people think it's much more complex than it is. And one thing that I love to do is teaching and educating, right? And I think that AI, especially the applied AI, not necessarily the nitty-gritty details within the algorithm, those can be complicated, but the applied AI, the things that you need to understand within AI are not at all complicated, and they are very easy to explain to a lot of people. And if I am not able to explain it as part of the podcast or something, I think that's on me as an educator, not on you, because everybody should be able to understand what it does and how you can apply it, and think of creative ways that you can use within your context.
And I think this is a good segue into kind of how I fit in this podcast. I was doing data science before it was even called data science. So my career started way in the late 1990s, early 2000s. And that feels so weird to say. I was in the late 20th century is when I started this whole journey. But it was all in data. And I came at AI from a very different perspective than yourself, right? So mine was always focused on data, on making sure that we wrangled the data, it had cleanliness, that we could actually look at building models around it and understand what it meant and understand the context and the process around it and basically clean up the use cases so that we could use data effectively, right? And my career has been a big kind of an amalgamation of all sorts of different experiences, whether it's in technology services for business analysis, it's reporting analytics, or making sure that we have data warehousing set up properly. I actually did learning and development for a little while, which is so weird, but it was a way for me to gain more experience in how our organizations worked. I have a bit of a finance background. I worked in a finance department where I managed the entire tech stack. And it's been both. My early career was mostly in private. Like I just worked in private. And I felt like around 6 years ago, I wanted to make the shift to more public sector and bring that experience that I had in private into public and help kind of bridge some of these gaps. So AI was interesting for me because it was peripheral. It wasn't central to my journey. And my strength has always been taking a look at what is the art of the possible, creating the strategy around it, and then implementing it in such a way that people can leverage it, which actually creates value and efficiency for the organization. AI isn't hard. People find it scary, so there's a lot of misinformation. I'm going to say it's misinformation around it, right? There's a lot of whataboutism. There's a lot of catastrophization. There's a lot of people who are like, oh God, the Skynet is coming. And you're sitting there and going, it's not that smart yet. When it gets that smart, yeah, we'll ring the bell, but it's not that smart yet. And so part of this is making sure people find it accessible and a way to connect with it, because the value that can come from it is so much higher as long as we're ethical and responsible in how we use those models, as long as we pick low risk use cases, as long as we're actually doing the things that make life easier for people. Because in the end, for me, it's about people. It's about making people's lives easier. It's hard enough as it is. If we can create some level of automation and support for specific processes or things that help bring people together, that's where I come in. So now I'm senior leader in a public sector organization, and I'm bringing together a team around this to operationalize AI, which includes the ethics and the responsibility around it. And you hear a lot of like fear mongering about job loss, but it's like the advent of the internet. It's the bringing of software. It is like mobile. It is like
everything.
It is exactly the same thing again. So it's not going to basically end the world as we know it. It's not going to kill all the jobs as we know them. Workforce shifts. That's natural. And it's really thinking about how this workforce is going to shift and being really thoughtful and pragmatic and responsible about how we do it. There's a lot of constructs around the application of AI. Because like you, I'm interested in applied AI. Like I work with a lot of theoretical groups. I actually go and look at all the research, and the theory is fascinating. The PhD level papers are fascinating, but in the end, it doesn't matter until it's applied. And that's where my interest has always been, is making sure that we apply AI, but we're applying it with a lens of responsibility, that we're applying it with a lens of ethics associated with it.
That's awesome. One of the things that really stuck with me was you're talking about the value, the importance of data in all of this, right? Like data being a foundational aspect of all of this. And again, talking about a professor, Stanford professor, what he would say is like, think of it as a pyramid, right? And at the bottom, like if you're solving any problem, like you're trying to make some algorithm better, right? Like better at predicting something, better credit risk or anything, right? Like you're making an algorithm better. So at the base of it is your data. And if you have better data, like so if there are two teams, one team has better data and better quality data than the other team. So that's the base, right? The second is what we call the feature engineering, or what the AI scientists do. Like that's our skill. Like how do we use the data to create the right features to use in the model, right? Like, so that's the second piece. And a lot of us take pride in how good we are at doing that, right? And then the third piece is like all the algorithms, like do you have the access to the latest and the greatest models and algorithms and things like that, right? So the data, if you have better data, you will beat anybody else who is better than the other two. And if you have the better like feature engineering, you'll beat better algorithm. And many times, at least in the early days, people are focusing on which algorithm, like what are the latest algorithms and all. But actually the data makes the biggest difference. And that's why I appreciate all the work that Aman you do and all the thought that you put into getting all the data together, because that is more like a foundation for everything else.
I have been in the data space for almost 26 years now. And being in the space, getting people to understand the value, because the minute you say data, their eyes glaze over and you're like, listen, this is what you need in order to get all the good, sexy stuff, right? Like everybody wants the sexy stuff, but they don't want the data governance. They don't want the, hey, we need to bring it all together and look at it effectively. And I like the fact that with agentic AI coming up, we're going to touch on all of these topics. How do you set up data governance? How do you actually build your platforms that bring it together? How do you do load balancing? What different types of AI do you do? How is it embedded in applications? How is it embedded in, or how do you build your own? Or how do you buy a model that you then train with your data? There's different flavors to AI across the board and how you implement. And so I think as we move forward, this is going to be really interesting, and bringing in leaders from different organizations. I might have a commitment from a leader at Microsoft in this space, which would be fascinating to have someone come in and chat with us for people who are actually implementing it from a supplier side, as well as other public sector leaders who are willing to come, and consulting companies who are willing to come and have a conversation with us to talk about what they're seeing and how they're evolving. And because it's not new, but it is new, right? Agentic AI is new. And it's the year of agentic AI. It is about leaving data sources where they are and being able to scan them and pull it together so you don't have to build the infrastructure. But there's always a but. there's more value in having the data all together in one spot anyways, because then you can model it for other purposes and you can do the validation of human in the loop. And all of these things are really nuanced, and thinking about them takes a lot of knowledge, and it takes community. So that's what I think we want to build here, is a community that brings these people together. So Girish, I'm going to end this off with one question. What would be your ideal end state for this podcast? What do you want to achieve here?
Beautiful. If you look at a lot of advances, like with the O1 models and the GPT-4o models, things are going to change, right? Like a lot of the work that we do is going to be different. Like a lot of things will get automated. Like I think, unfortunately, because of just the jargons and the words and the scariness that comes along with AI, it's going to take, unfortunately, too long for it to get implemented. I think, like, each department, like, why are you not using it today? Like, it should be like a lot of team structures and whatnot. Like, why are they not using it today? And I want to be able to help accelerate that, right? Like, and maybe instead of 10, 15 years, we can make the change in 2, 3 years. And in public sector, especially, even better than private sector, a lot of people are sharing because everybody wants others to win too, right? Like, and once you do, it's like in IKEA furniture. Once you build it, like whatever it is, conversational agent or whatever, you have to figure a bunch of stuff out. But once you figure that out, and if you are in a public sector where you're okay sharing it with others, others can just use like 80, 90% of it. So I'm hoping we accelerate that adoption of AI. That is one of the goals. What is yours? What are your thoughts on that?
I think my goal is to demystify it. It's to talk about how if you actually set up a capability around AI, then you're basically just looking at it like use case, and it becomes so much less scary if you have foundations correct. It's about making sure, like you talked about, adopting within the departments and doing it in 2 or 3 years. And there's a lot of dabbling, and there's not enough, let's make this a real effective tool for our organizations. There's a lot of, hey, we don't know what it is, but you're not going to find out what it is, and you're not going to be able to evolve and innovate with it unless you build capability, unless you build structure, and unless you actually approach it from a strategic lens going, I'm mitigating the risk this way, but I'm adding value this way, and that risk versus value conversation. And that's where I'd like to go with this. I'm going to give an anecdote from a story perspective. So in 2023, when ChatGPT, end of 2022, arguably, but when ChatGPT, the first iteration, came out and everybody went on ChatGPT, and the uptick was like 1 billion people in like less than a month. And it was pretty insane. And everybody went, oh, crap, like LLMs have just hit public consciousness. And this LLM is that next phase of evolution when it comes to this technology. And I remember looking at it going, unless we get the data right, unless we get the ethics right, this is not going to be good. So I want to be at the forefront of this. I want to be at the beginning of this. And I want to be one of the people who structures the ethics around it. I want to be one of the people who puts the structure around it. And so that's one of the things that's been my goal right from the beginning in 2023, is to create and parameterize how we use AI safely and how we can leverage it to create value. So that's the conversations I want to have, is like push it from a strategic perspective and really think about what's the benefit, why are we doing it, and how are we going to make it work for us going forward.
Perfect. I think that is one of my motivation too. There is coolness versus value, right? Like you see a lot of demos. Like if you ask many companies, they would have done some AI, and many times these would be demos. And then if you come back to them after 2 years, nothing is implemented. And one of the things that I'm really enjoying working with you, Aman, is how to take those demos, and sometimes the demos can't get into really value, like high value products. And sometimes the problem, like half of the problems might be the technology. Actually, the technology was not there for a real product, it was just good enough for a demo. But the other half of the problem is because of all the other things, the ethics and the organizational structure around it, that you need to take anything that you have proved in a proof of concept and putting it into a real thing where it's actually giving value. So yeah, helping people go from those cool demos to actually getting excited about valuable products. And those valuable products might not be as sexy as some of the cool demos, but I find them more exciting. Like, oh wow, you can take all these customer comments and can give me so nice, cool insights. That is exciting for me, right? Like, so the value is what is really exciting for me, as opposed to the cool, flashy demos. And that's what I'm hoping we can, help people do together.
It's because we're both nerds. Like, frankly, is what it comes down to. So let's create a fundamental foundational understanding for people as we move forward in this space, that we're moving forward in lockstep and you're not being sold snake oil. Like that's like the key thing. Don't fall for the hype. That's all.
Totally.
That's all I care about is don't fall for the hype. AI is really valuable, but it's not going to solve world hunger. And one of the key things I'm finding, and I don't know if you're seeing this right now, is that a lot of people think that AI is the answer to every single problem. And so it's the hammer, right? So every problem looks like a nail and your hammer is AI. You're going to try and hit every problem with that AI hammer. That's not the right thing to do. There are some places where robotic process automation is going to serve you way better. There's some places where service design is actually the key thing you need to do properly in order to leverage AI effectively, right? So there's a lot of outside factors that people forget about how you run your organization or your processes or your business that matter in this space. And without understanding the strategic context of this AI tool helping this service, it is helping this service. It is an aid. It is not the answer.
Totally. I'm so excited about this, and I can't wait to start recording. Some of the episodes would be us talking about some concepts. Like initially, we might just give some basic concepts about how we think of AI and setting up the terminology and some foundational work. And then we'll invite some people who are actually the ones who are doing the work. These are the gems, like not the people who you see in a lot of conferences, but these are the people who are doing the work, and we'll bring them in. And yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
You know what I want to talk to? I want to talk to like the data engineers who are responsible for setting up the pipelines that support the AI developers when both of them are tearing their hair out with each other, right? Like I want to know the conflict and the crux of the issue. I want to talk to the person who's doing the load balancing in performance management when we're using an AI model. Like I want to bring those people in to talk about this is the real stuff. Like this is dirty tech and this is what we're doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to make AI sound simple and boring. Like that's it. This is it. This was AI. Make AI boring again. Like that's our motto.
I like this conversation. The banter was good.
This was govai.fm. Connect with us on LinkedIn, suggest a guest, and stay tuned for real stories from AI in action.